There we go. That's better. Hey, YouTube, this is Gavaguy. Uh, this, I just was kind of bored and felt like doing Hangout. I posted the link in the G Plus announcement of this. Let me go ahead and post this on the YouTube page as well. Feel free to join in. It's pretty informal. The topic here is really just to talk about morality and the Bible, or morality and whatever your God belief might be. So the inspiration for this was a post from Jungle Jargon, who I follow on G Plus. He's a fundamentalist Christian. Let me go ahead and screen share so you can see what his post is about. It was a meme. It was a Eric Hovind thing. Atheists continually accuse me of lying, but they can't tell me why lying is wrong without using my worldview. Ha ha ha. So, I mean, in a sense, you can't. It's just such an underhanded thing to try and say that Christians are the sole proprietors, or Christianity is the sole proprietor of any kind of moral claims or moral values, especially given the fact that Christians so quickly shut down, or seem to, when you try to press them on this issue. And well, what are you even talking about? If I can scroll down here, I asked, if someone would kind of give an interpretation of the meaning of the meme, and this person, Rich White, and I'm not familiar with him. This is the first encounter that I've had with him, to my recollection, at any rate. But he says you can't have an objective moral standard without an objective lawgiver. And I asked, can you give an example of an objective law from your deity? And he just said, LMAO, atheists. I guess maybe he was responding to someone else there. And I said, I guess the answer is no, you have no objective law. So objective moral standards, he says, going down, are self-evident. You're the one with the burden of proof. So again, here he's deflecting and saying, I don't have to give you anything. It's self-evident. Well, and to say that I have the burden of proof is also rather disingenuous, because I haven't made any claims here. I'm not the one that posted this meme. I'm not the one who has made any statements at all, really. All I just said was, what does this mean? And can you give an example? I have nothing to discharge here as far as a burden of proof. So at any rate, it kind of goes on. If you have an objective law, an objective moral standard, and you can't, why would you refuse to give an example of what you're talking about? That just it escapes me, unless you're trying to avoid the possibility of being exposed for, being wrong or something. I think that a lot of these exchanges, there's a lot of worry that someone is going to lead you down a path where you might have to answer a question that you don't know the answer to, or whatever. But if you're sincerely interested in believing or holding true beliefs, I think that you can you can step outside of that for a bit, um, and just try and give some honest answers, right? I mean, nobody likes to be shown that they're wrong, uh, and myself included. I like to believe that I have true beliefs. I like to believe that what I'm believing is real and has some grounding in the real world. But I'm willing to change my beliefs if I can be shown that I'm wrong. Um, that was one of the things that kind of has bothered me in the past about some of the people that I grew up with, and how I felt like no matter what, that they were going to believe those things that uh, and never going to change their positions. That just seems like a philosophical dead end to me, um, and sets you up for problematic beliefs and problematic exchanges and interactions with people who are sincerely looking for truth and true beliefs. Um, Anyhow, and here's another kind of scenario that I've been thinking about lately. Um, if you are a Christian and and you were, let's say, you were selected for jury duty, and it was a murder trial, and um, someone had murdered, let's say, has murdered his neighbor, um, and that person's defense was, I was trying to love my neighbor, like the Bible tells me to, and I believe that the God of the Bible, and uh, I'm a Christian, and I believe that the God of the Bible commanded me to kill my neighbor. Uh, how would you how would you argue with that? How would you say, well, no, it can't be? Because clearly there have been instances, if you're to believe that the Bible is true, there are instances where the God of the Bible commanded people to kill other people who were living, you know, uh, next to them, even women and children, and animals and things. So, if everything that the God of the Bible says is good is is good legitimately, and he's able to communicate with people. Um, how is it that you could come to the conclusion that this person didn't do the right thing in that situation? I mean, if you were commanded by your God to kill someone, and you believe that everything he says is good, I think that you would have to say that that person did the right thing. Um, yeah, I just don't see any other way around it. Now, I think that it's wrong to kill people, and I would say that there are objective and rational grounds for saying that it is wrong. Um, and I think in some of Jesus's teachings, he kind of touches on this. So he was at least partially right in one thing that he said, which was, the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do to you. I think that is a pretty strong foundation for moral principle, as a moral principle. Um, Reciprocity. The the problem is that it seems to conflict with a lot of what was going on in the Bible. So, um, you can look back at the Old Testament and say, well, how can you um, how do you excuse these things being commanded to go through and slaughter Amalekites and Canaanites and things, um, including all of their children. And um, it's really hard for me to square that with the idea of loving your neighbor as yourself. So my question is always, did morality change? So in the Old Testament times, loving your neighbor as yourself was not the kind of the guiding moral principle. That came later. So morality changed. Maybe Yahweh decided that 10 Commandments and the old law were problematic or flawed, and in the New Testament, he decided, well, we can make things better here. So we're going to say loving your neighbor is important. I mean, that obviously creates some kind of sticky points theologically or as far as doctrine for Orthodox Christians, because morality is not supposed to change because it's supposedly based on the character of the deity, and the deity, his character, is not supposed to be changing either. So welcome. I've got a guest here, Nazar. Is that how you pronounce it? Um, I've not met you before, I don't think. Oh, are you gone? Well, feel free to jump into the conversation. It was my intention to make this an open hangout for anybody to jump in. Um, so where was I? The you know the So the problem is, how do you square what's happening in the Old Testament with the commands that are given in the New Testament by Jesus specifically? Do unto others as you'd have them do to you, or love your neighbor as yourself. I think that's uh, directly a problem. I also have, and the reason I kind of bang away at these issues of morality and justice is because this was kind of the prime reason why my faith came crashing down. Is when I was sincerely trying to, as a believer, understand how a Christian should interact in a liberal democracy like we have in the United States, where we are able to cast votes and support legislation and laws that directly affect people who are not believers, in many cases. And so my question was, well, we could go about it in a variety of different ways. We could say, um, everybody has to become Christian. Well, that really didn't square with my faith, because I didn't think that you could force people to become Christian. It was something that, from my perspective, you had to accept and be a willing participant in. And then I said, well, what about all of these kind of social issues that I had been raised to believe were important, saying no to same-sex marriage and abortion, and those are two different things, but they're kind of have been traditionally, or at least within the last several decades, been kind of tied to religious right politics. And I was raised to believe that those were some of the most important things we could do as believers, is to kind of raise the banner on those issues. As I kind of read through the Bible and then evaluated how this might impact people and things, I said, well, if I believe that people should have a right to say yes or no to religion, As far as the same-sex marriage issue goes, if my foundation for believing that same-sex marriage was right, I mean, not right, was based on religion, then I reasoned that people should have the right to, based on whatever their beliefs are, to reject my religious position and go through their own things. And I thought, you know, allowing that, if my faith was really true, my beliefs in the Bible and God were true, then there should be a marked difference in the success and satisfaction and overall happiness of people who were, from my perspective at the time, following the Bible, and those who were not. And by disallowing that, we weren't allowing that experiment to be even carried out. So I changed my position to being in favor of same-sex marriage, even though on a religious level I said, or I was of the opinion that it was wrong. And then I had some similar kind of shifts in my position and understanding about abortion and abortion rights, because I thought, well, it's a very personal issue and things, and that there are some cases where women should be allowed to have an abortion, if the mother's life is in jeopardy, and an abortion would save her, even if it meant that the baby would die. That's an option that should be available to people, because in some cases a mother might be a mother to many other children, and to say that she, that's not even an option available to her, you're saying it's a death sentence to the mother. And I don't think that it should be forced, that the mother doesn't have the ability to make that choice for herself, with her doctor and her husband. But I think that the choice should be theirs to be made, not the government. And if that's the case, if there are some circumstances, and I came to believe that rape was another situation that was like that, and that women should be allowed to choose, not be forced to carry a child that was forced upon them. As a Christian at the time, I believed that our court system and judicial system wasn't set up, and is not capable of making timely decisions, distinguishing when, in situations where the woman should be allowed to have the abortion and where she shouldn't. And so my position shifted to, it should be allowed, and left up to the woman. Reflecting on these things and trying to piece together what I thought was a more just kind of platform, for lack of a better word, for Christians to hold. I really thought, well, doing to others as you'd have them do to you should be kind of part of that, part of the thrust, I suppose, for a Christian political view. And so I started to try and apply that, with regard to taxes and labor laws and things like that. And as I read history and realized just how much of an impact the labor unions and just how much that changed our environment, consumer protection laws and things like that. All of those things made society better for everyone. And so I thought, I reasoned that these are all good things, and I think made our society more just. I thought that we should move, do what we could as Christians to make society fair and just for everyone, and that meant, allowing for religious freedoms and allowing for all these things. Well, then when I reflected back on the Bible after kind of going down this road, I really ran into a lot of problems trying to process how these principles of justice were manifest in the Bible, and they weren't there really. You have the Old Testament where people are given really harsh penalties in a lot of cases for things that seemed rather trivial, and in other cases, David and Bathsheba, the penalties were really almost non-existent. He's the leader of the free world, the leader of the nation of Israel, who conspired to have a husband killed, and he committed adultery with the wife, tried to cover things up, and it was really hard for me to see how these things were just. Is that you, Phony Beetle?
Hello.
Hey.
I'm going to be here for about 10-15 minutes, bro.
Okay. Well, glad you could join me. What are your thoughts on the issue of the justice of God, or the God of the Bible?
It depends how you define justice, because is justice. It depends what you mean. Like social justice, and I personally believe that justice is fairness, and I think that Jesus teaches that. He's not against all people; he's just against people who are leading people astray in one way or another.
So, and I know you're a much more kind of theologically liberal Christian. What do you think, or how do you understand like the Old Testament things, Old Testament law, and like, so for example, Achan in the Old Testament.
Well, the way I understand the Old Testament is it's the Jews talking about their struggles through the ancient world. In my opinion, this is just what I personally think. That they had struggles that they had to go through, and it's them documenting that and how God got them through that. Now, they use God to justify a lot of horrible things, I think.
Okay.
Because let's say, for example, you and somebody else, we're in a society that hadn't come up with the social system we have at the moment. There is no UN, there is no NATO, there is no, your party that you can go to for a redress of grievances or who protects your rights and safety. Then you're going to have to do everything you can to protect yourself, and that will unfortunately lead to a lot of horrible, what we would consider now morally reprehensible acts. And I think that's how we should judge the Old Testament, and that's how I personally did. Is that it's okay to judge it through the lens of now, but I don't think that's fair, because we should judge it as the lens of then. And was that action necessarily? I would say no, but probably then they would probably be able to justify it a bit more than we can now.
So, I understand what you're saying. To me, it seems like a wasted opportunity for a deity. If do you believe that the Jewish people or the Hebrews were God's chosen people in some sense?
In some sense, yes. I believe we all are God's chosen people in that sense, but He used the Jews to tell a wider narrative.
So, to me, it would have been much more persuasive if they had a law or kind of a social system that, when we looked at it, we might be able to say, wow, what great insights into what is genuinely just and moral and whatever. And instead, I mean, I don't think that their system was particularly horrible given the context and history that they had, but it still doesn't stand out as like a shining example of goodness. You know what I'm saying?
No, I get what you're saying. I mean, for me, the Ten Commandments, the moral things they came up with, it's an ethical framework to operate from. But before that, yeah, I would agree with you that their system wasn't exactly a shining light. But I think the Ten Commandments are a shining light, considering the societies around them and where they were. I mean, there are lots of things in the Old Testament that were reflecting or making comment about things that were happening around them. Like, for example, the whole thing about Abraham was a social commentary on the pagan ritualistic culture around them that did child and human sacrifices. And he was making comment about how that was immoral.
Well, but it doesn't. Well, I don't think that in that circumstance that comes out as the final conclusion, because Abraham had to have been convinced that it was at least possible that the God he believed in and was interacting with would require that. Otherwise it's not. If he didn't believe that Yahweh was going to actually ask him to sacrifice his son, it's not even a test, really, right? It's just going through the actions and believing that he'll blow the whistle at the final time.
Okay, but the thing is that if you see other gods around you commanding that and not blowing the final whistle, and then the god you worship doing that, then that makes your god a little bit better. Maybe not a lot better, but a little bit better. Because he doesn't command you to do that on a regular basis. Because the crops are failing, or because, little Timmy football team didn't win that game, or whatever, or the autumn wasn't so kind, and that's what we say, in my opinion. But again, this is my interpretation of a theology. Again, you'll probably get somebody in here say it's all one literal. Again, I personally don't think that, but
right, yeah, and I think your position is much more defensible. It's not satisfactory to a lot of fundamentalists and things. I struggle to see kind of a God at work in your case. To me, it seems like people making the best of what they can, and they're making laws to have a stable society, and we've progressed since that time, and that's why we have what we have today, and they had what they had back then.
Right, and I agree up to a certain time they did, but I'm saying that the Ten Commandments was God interacting with the world and giving them an ethical set that they can go forth with. Again, I would argue that the Ten Commandments is the justice or the just of God coming out into the world and making so we can make it a better place. Because those laws are a way that we can go forth as a species and make it better. Because if we don't steal and we don't kill and we don't do the things that he says, then we're more likely to have a clear path of where we want to go.
Yeah, I think most societies that had any kind of stability whatsoever and were self-sustaining had some similar laws. I think that those, you can't have a society without having at least a few of those basic things. Even respecting another man's wife, but in biblical times, in the Old Testament, it was the wife was considered property just as much as the animals and things, and so you're not supposed to commit adultery. You're not supposed to steal your neighbor's cattle or donkey or whatever. All those things are kind of almost on a level. I mean, obviously, uh, people might be more inclined to have sex with his neighbor's wife than to have sex with his donkey or something. But um, it just is something that if you don't have some of those kind of social norms in place, you're set up for a very quickly destructive, just society that's self-destructive, I suppose.
Possibly. I mean, but I mean, I would say that the Jewish society was more fit to be like that because it had survived a lot through its time. It'd been invaded every 5 minutes. So I think that the ethical system it had was to make sure that it didn't get infected by everything around it. And I would argue that God itself was making those laws to prevent that sort of thing, to make sure that it didn't co-opt the morality of Rome or the morality of Greece or the morality of the Canaanites or whoever else was going to invade at that time. So they had a moral center to return to. Because I mean, again, the Canaanite religion itself had aspects of sacrifices that sacrifice. It wasn't as common as other things, but it still occurred.
Yeah.
So I mean, you need a moral center to return to if you're going to get invaded every 5 minutes. It's a reason why I think that America's a better country than Britain because you have a written Bill of Rights and a written constitution where we don't. It's a flexible constitution.
Yeah. Another issue related to that is, well, why would this deity have parked them in real estate that was going to constantly be run over by all these invading empires and things? I mean, that just seems like a situation. If he knew that the Persians and the Greeks and whoever else came rumbling through there, he could have put them somewhere else where they were not in the middle of the roadway in the Fertile Crescent, right? And also maybe had them excluded a little bit more, so that they would be less inclined to be influenced by the neighboring people, or to make them, the influential empire that flourished to the extent, to the point that they could have been the dominant power.
Again, he did that, but that wasn't what he wanted for the Jews. He wanted the Jews to be their own thing. I mean, the thing is that Rome was a paganistic thing that did its. That was the reason it did what it did, was to conquer all before it and hold them in its sway. Whereas Judaism isn't about that. Judaism is about peace and about overcoming your violent and aggressive tendencies. I won't close the door.
But you say that, but then you look at what they did to the Canaanites and Amalekites and their neighbors in the Promised Land, and they were not peaceful or accommodating at all.
Well, if somebody came and it depends on how they came. If they came at them violently, then they would respond violently. But to me, that's just how any back then would respond. We have the medieval laws of Britain that we could look at, and just for example, and that's basically the society they lived in, where if you didn't defend yourself, you're going to get overtaken every 5 minutes, and the Jews probably had enough and thought, what, we're going to beat back, and then they came across something that they couldn't beat, which was the Greek Empire, and then it was the Roman Empire.
Yeah. But it wasn't like they just parked and then said, okay, we're going to stand our ground. They went and were the kind of instigators of a lot of the violence and invasions and things into these neighboring communities. I think what they were supposed to, if I remember right, offer them a chance to surrender. And if not, they were gonna, just mow over them.
Yeah, that was just their way. I mean, like, again, I'm not gonna be an apologist if I'm going to use that word for the way the Jews acted in certain ways, but I'll apologise for the way that the Jews defended themselves, or the way that anybody defends themselves against,
Sure.
somebody who wants to be a violent, invader. Sometimes it comes with violence itself. Sometimes it comes with words and protest. It depends how you really want to approach this. You can either take the Indian way or you can take the American way. I always say of trying to instigate, protest and rebellion. So that's just the way I see it. The ancient world, as much as we would like to think it, had bad people in it, and some of those bad people wanted to kill you. And if you didn't kill them first, you were going to get slaughtered. It's basically evolution for you.
Yeah. Yeah, but then I mean that again that makes it hard to see a deity at work and not just another kind of link in the long chain of history that existed. And I don't know, I just don't see it myself.
Well, I mean, to me, as I said, the Ten Commandments, and then again, the New Testament, the Old Testament to me is, songs that the Jews sang, and then which. Anyway, I've got to go. I'm really sorry.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I enjoyed the conversation.
All right, if you want to talk again, I'm around.
All right.
Bye.
So I've got some viewers. If any of you is interested in hopping in, I'm more than happy to have more company here. Like I said earlier, this is intended to be kind of an open hangout. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, the idea that somebody who doesn't believe in the God of the Bible has no basis for criticizing the God of the Bible's actions from a moral perspective or whatever. I think that's inherently problematic because if you have any let me start over. We can imagine a world in which there is an evil deity, right, who is malicious and wicked and creates beings with the sole purpose of tormenting them and torturing them and just doing bad things to the people. We can envision a world where there is a good and moral and benevolent and just deity, and that has other meanings and things. We could also imagine a deity who has some combination of those characteristics. If we have a deity who has not given us the capacity to make moral evaluations, then we don't have any idea which of those scenarios we're even dealing with. All we have is a deity in the sky who is telling us that he's moral, but he might be immoral and carrying out acts that seem immoral to us, maybe, but we can't make a judgment on them because we don't have that moral compass. If we do have a moral compass and we do have some internal knowledge, I suppose, for what is good and what is right and what is just, and conversely what is evil and wicked and wrong, then we are capable of making moral evaluations, whether it's a man or a deity. And I think that failing to make a moral evaluation of a being, be it man or deity, and trying to evaluate whether or not that person has moral character, is in and of itself. If you fail to do that, or at least to try to do that, you're setting yourself up to serve a very powerful and immoral being. So I think it's very important to do your best to look at what your God belief, if you have a God belief. I think it's important to look at that deity, how he's described, how he acts according to your sacred text, whether you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, and try to say, well, what did this deity do, and was it good? If I were in that person's shoes and I was doing my best to be a just and moral being, would I make the same choices? Would I make the same decisions? And ultimately, for myself, I decided that no, I couldn't buy that with the God of the Bible, Yahweh, and even with Jesus in the New Testament. Whatever your belief about the Trinity or what have you might be, looking at the idea that this God created an eternal punishment of hell, that doesn't seem fair or just based on a lifetime where we really don't have a lot of answers that are clearly spelled out for us. And we just kind of have to do our best to get along in the world, and whatever the case may be, if that deity has a plan that he wants for us to carry out as individuals, it's not communicated well or clearly. That's the reason that we have so many religious denominations, looking both at Christianity, at Islam, what have you. There are a myriad of different takes on it based on the way that they read and understand the text. So whatever the deity's intention, if there is this deity out there, he did not communicate it well. And why would he leave it to just one person, or in some cases a number of different people, to communicate his will and intentions to the world? Why wouldn't he communicate it clearly to each and every person if it was that important? We should be all very clear on what he meant and what he said. There's no guessing about Newton's theories. They were clearly spelled out. People don't come away from what is the Mathematica Principia book that he wrote with different understandings of his equations or his reasoning and things. They're pretty clearly spelled out. That's not the case with the Bible, with the books of the Old Testament that the Jews have accepted as sacred. It's not the case with the Quran, or with any other religious text for that matter. The two or the three Abrahamic religions kind of are the ones that I tend to encounter the most where I live. But I think that that's also true of Hinduism and Buddhism as well, which are clearly very different than the Abrahamic religions, but still have some similarities there. What else? I don't know. I don't know if I've got much else to say. I was kind of hoping more people would jump in. I had what is it, Alek, Nassar Alek joined, but didn't really participate. And then Phony Beetle Maniacs joined in, but he's had to go. I've had some conversations with Mr. Brittam. If you're out there, I'm gonna shoot you an invite, maybe because it looks like you've responded to some things that I've posted out there. We'll see if I can get you in here. There you are. Yeah, like I was saying, the New Testament idea that there's an eternal hell where people are tortured forever, also seemed very, very unjust and unfair to me. I visited with my dad. My mother passed away three weeks ago or so. Maybe it's just 2 weeks ago now. Anyways, and so I spent this last week visiting with my dad. Both mom and dad were religious and fundamentalist Christians growing up. When they last visited me, and when mom was alive, last fall, they came to visit. I went to church with them here where I live, and as I sat in the church service, I found myself wondering, you are sitting in the church worshiping a deity that you think is going to burn me in hell for eternity. And you clearly love me. You are and I never doubted my parents' love and concern for my well-being and things. And I know that it pains them that I'm not a believer, in part because they do believe this. But yet this God that they believe will torture me, and who supposedly also loves me, is not doing anything to reach out to me and say anything, and never has. That was the other part of the reason for my deconversion and kind of the crumbling of my faith, was when I looked back and realized this deity's never had anything to do with me. I've prayed fervently and sincerely for a variety of things, for people to be healed, and never saw anything that I could point to say, well, this is clearly miraculous. People healed in some cases over a natural, normal timeline. In other cases, they had terminal illnesses that terminated their lives, and my family and friends suffered heartache and grief because of that. Including the loss of my mom very recently. And I know my dad discovered her kind of slumped over in her chair and called 911. And I would wager a very high amount of money that he, spent the time between finding her and the time that the EMTs were there, fervently praying for her to be revived and helped by the EMTs, and it didn't happen. And you just have to kind of scratch your head and say, well, why would that not have happened? You know, if this deity is out there, he has the power to do that. That would have, you know, I mean, the EMTs. Well, if she had revived and you know, before the EMTs got there, that might have been something that you know, I might have looked at as potentially miraculous. I mean, I guess people pass out and go unconscious and wake up. I don't know. That might not have been a great example, but it it might have helped. And you know, there were a number of other instances where I could have said, you know, something might have been genuinely miraculous. We had, and I've given this example in a number of other videos and things, but I had two young men in our youth group growing up who had acquired HIV and AIDS through blood transfusions because they were hemophiliacs. And this was back in the 80s when they contracted the disease. And they found out, you know, in the late 80s or early 90s. And both of them passed away, you know, in spite of desperate prayers from their family, from our church. You know, they clearly had not done anything to deserve that any more than anyone else. They were born with a blood disease, and contracted another even worse disease that you know, ended up killing them. And it just was hard to see why a just and loving God who is powerful enough to carry out those things and answer those prayers would refuse to do that. Nasser, you're back. Are you able to converse with me at all? Maybe he's getting microphone set up or something. I don't know. I'd love for you to be able to join the conversation. But anyhow, I was talking about my mom and dad sitting in church with me, and yeah, it really, I just shook my head. I don't even know how to express that or even understand it. Let's see, Derek, how are you? Derek has left. Everybody's kind of hopping in and out. But and why anyone would be compelled or feel interested or compelled to worship a deity who was going to burn your loved ones for all of eternity, that I just don't understand it. Or, you know, to burn anyone for all of eternity seems really bad. I mean, even your worst enemies. What I could see, you know, wiping them out or something like that and saying, "You're gone, you're done." You know, but to sit there and torture and torture and torture day in, day out, hour after hour, month after month, year after year, never ceasing torture, just horrific. And then, you know, the solution to that is that the deity had to give himself a body to have us kill it. Why? Why not just forgive people? Why not just say, if you're sincerely doing your best, that's good enough. You know, because it's good enough after you believe that he gave himself a body and had us kill it and then raised it from the dead, I suppose. I don't know if you believe that Jesus died but aren't convinced that resurrection happened, do you get to go to heaven? You know, if you try and do your best after that, it seems kind of silly. Why does anything have to die? I don't demand that people who offend me have to kill something in order for me to forgive them. I just do it. I just forgive them. I say, okay, we all make mistakes. Try to do better. But so, I mean, and I think that speaks to the idea of a just and certainly a merciful God. And I think it kind of rules out the candidacy of the God of the Bible. Nasser Alek, I don't know if you are a Muslim. I'd be really interested in talking with you, because I really honestly don't know a whole lot about Islam, and I would love to hear your views on that if you're a Muslim. And the only reason I even wonder if that's true is your name is Nasser Alek, which to me sounds like Middle Eastern, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm being prejudiced or something. I hope not, and I hope I'm not to offend you. But yeah, I'm definitely interested. I've got a few people in my circles who are Muslim, but I've not been regularly interacting with any of them. So anyhow, since nobody's hopped in and I've pretty much exhausted the topic from just off the cuff comments and things on my own, I think I may shut it down. Let me see. I'm going to look through my notifications here to see. If anybody has messaged me to tell me anything. No, it doesn't look like it. So I think I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. Thanks for the few of you who have been watching. Maybe we can do another hangout some other time. Oh, Derek's back. Hey, Derek. Do you have a mic? Dope. Well, did you have anything you want to say? I see that you're there chatting. If you want to jump in here. What if God was one of us, huh? Yeah, I guess how would we know? Well, I'm gonna take it offline here. We can chat, but I've had some hangouts in the past where I've interacted with people in the chat who didn't have microphones, and it doesn't work so good. So thanks for watching, everyone. Derek, if you want to sit around and chat after the broadcast is ended here, I'm more than happy to have a chat conversation with you. Doesn't make for a good video, though. So thanks, everyone.